So it's a great pleasure to welcome Sophie, who's General Secretary of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. Welcome, Sophie.
Thanks very much. And I just wanted to thank Angie and Kate for this fantastic conference. It's just so great to see all of you here. And also, as Angie said, sort of being so close to Lakenheath, all of us have heard like the F-35A jets like flying over. You can really kind of understand what it's like for people living here and the kind of the normalisation of this extreme and incredibly dangerous militarisation. So thanks again. So, you know, as people have said, you know, the global dynamics are shifting really rapidly now, aren't they? And this has been really precipitated by the election of Donald Trump. You know, Trump's election, I think, is kind of turbocharged US global dominance, not diminished it. We have the same US foreign policy, which is to maintain military supremacy in order to maintain its global dominance. But now, with Trump, the gloves are off, aren't they? Within weeks of taking office, we saw a whole array of very serious threats to other countries' sovereignty, Greenland, Canada, Panama, with Trump saying he will take, by military force or economic coercion, territory he views as being militarily, economically, and strategically beneficial to the US ruling elite. So an outright colonialist approach. And the US, where the US is going to control the resources of other countries and subordinate those countries to US interests. And this isn't new US policy, it's a continuation of decades-long policy, like the invasion and occupation of Iraq to control that country's oil reserves. The US then hid its self-serving motives. It lied to justify the military interventionist aggression. You know, it was all about stopping weapons of mass destruction. It was all about upholding democracy. All lies, obviously, and in many cases, you know, those were exposed. But now, as I say, what we're seeing is these self-serving motives are all out in the open. And I think this is creating kind of a lot of contradictions, but also a lot of opportunities. Excuse me. In Ukraine, Trump's brutal negotiations to end the war there is again exposing these very venal self-interests that are driving this policy. And it's a self-interest that has been at the heart of NATO and NATO policy across Europe, which is all about asserting US dominance across Europe and projecting its nuclear aggression against Russia. Trump's attempts to secure this settlement has been used to whip up international tensions by Britain and, you know, lots of countries across Europe and beyond in order to justify these absolutely huge Cold War level increases in military spending. And this warmongering makes the world far more dangerous, our populations poorer, and it totally plays into Trump's hands. As NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has said, it means that US plans to shift towards Asia will be coordinated with European allies. So Trump's coordination with these allies is absolutely clear. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron have pulled together many European countries, as well as Turkey, Australia, Canada, Japan and New Zealand, to form this so-called coalition of the willing, an apparent reassurance force to continue arming Ukraine. The European Union has ripped up fiscal rules to create the funding package to drive this militarism, rapidly rebranded from Rearm Europe to Readiness 2030. And this 2030 date is when Europe must be ready to militarily confront Russia or repel such an attack. and it's backed by €800 billion finance package for this massive rearmament. Meanwhile, we've seen Macron's nuclear sharing proposal for Europe, which risks nuclear-armed French jets being deployed potentially in Poland, right on Russia's border. And the role of the British government has been particularly reckless in really shockingly provocative piece of warmongering. Last month, both Keir Starmer and John Healey threatened Russia with Britain's nuclear weapons, wheeling out British Rear Admiral to boast that just one nuclear submarine can cause the incineration of 40 Russian cities. And where is this military coordination with the US taking us? Towards a Europe bristling with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons, whilst there is this constant threat of nuclear annihilation with Russia looming over us. And towards a nuclear confrontation with China as the US under Trump rapidly refocuses its overwhelming military might to the Asia-Pacific. And we know that Trump is expanding missile defence. This system would enable the US to use its nuclear weapons without fear of retaliatory strike. And just after his inauguration, the US moved its Typhoon missile system in the Philippines to within striking range of major Chinese military and industrial targets. And of course, China has reacted, calling this a great provocation. Britain and Europe's massive rearmament programme at Trump's behest is based on the same decades-long failed strategy of maintaining the US as the dominant #1 superpower in the world. And it's this that has led to the interconnected crises we all face today: growing nuclear threats and war, climate breakdown, worsening global inequality and austerity, and the resurgence of the far right. And Trump's election is only accelerating this, and it threatens our entire existence. So progressive movements across the world must come together to halt this dangerous escalation of militarism. Certainly in Britain, Trump's "Make America Great Again" mantra is deeply, deeply unpopular. And this is creating opportunities to expose the dangers of Britain's nuclear dependence, this so-called special relationship with the US. From Britain's role in the AUKUS nuclear alliance against China, to the likely stationing of new US nuclear weapons at Lakenheath, to hosting bases for US missile defence, Britain enables the US to project its nuclear and military dominance across the world. And there is strong, very, very strong opposition now growing to these increases in military spending. We see big majorities of voters that support public funding to go towards decent levels of benefits instead of increasing defence spending. So we need to mobilise the growing sections of the population rejecting this dangerous rise in militarism and these huge attacks on living standards. Coordinated initiatives for peace are developing across Europe with the Stop Rearm initiatives. This is just one example. And Britain can take inspiration from the huge protests that have taken place in Rome and Germany. We must all work together to promote peaceful global cooperation, and central to that is a re-establishment, as people have said, of a common security policy. And I think that this conference here today is really, really significant in us being able to develop that movement. And also, finally, just to remember that it has always been public protest that has forced politicians to step back from the nuclear brink. And we know that people really understand the nuclear dangers that we're facing today. So it's absolutely crucial that we use every opportunity to bring that wider movement, that greater awareness to come to bases like this and take part in action. So thanks very much.